Welcome back to Be the People. We're focusing on the changing roles faith and values play in our daily lives in America. We're interested in your thoughts. You can email me at carol@bethepeopletv.com or contact us via Twitter and Facebook. I recently sat down with Dr. Richard Land, who heads the Ethics and Religious Liberty Commission at the Southern Baptist Convention. I asked him if we can still call ourselves a Judeo-Christian nation.
Can we say that America is a Judeo-Christian nation? I think that depends on how you define it. If you define it as our founding values, yes, we were a nation that was founded on Judeo-Christian values and an attempt to wed those Judeo-Christian values with Enlightenment ideas of self-government. But if you're looking about practice, I would say no. I mean, you know, yes, 85% of Americans claim some affiliation with some form of the Christian faith. But then how do you square that with 41% illegitimacy? How do you square that with virtually half of marriages ending in divorce?
Father John Sins Baker, a Catholic chaplain in the Vanderbilt community, and Dr. Paul Lim from the Vanderbilt Divinity School are back with us to talk more about faith and values. And Father Baker, I cut you off in the last segment. Is there anything you'd like to say before we talk about Richard Land's comment?
Well, actually, I think he anticipated a little bit where I was thinking about going, but that idea of practice as Christians, I think that that's something that, regardless of what institutions or bodies in our society legislate or dictate, that call to really practice, to really live our discipleship of Jesus Christ is something that we are all more or less free to do. Now, we may encounter obstacles to doing it, but I think that's a really important thing for us to focus on as Christians, is really living it, really doing it. And then it's very persuasive, I think.
And what does it mean to live a Christian life in your assessment? And either one of you can weigh in here.
Well, I like to add this, that I'm not entirely certain that I agree with Dr. Land's perspective on Judeo-Christian nation, and I'm kind of going on a limb when I say this, but I think we need to recapture the vision of the early church. They did not have imperial protection, they had imperial persecution.
Right.
They were certainly in the minority.
Right.
They weren't trying to, you know what I mean? So I think
they were not trying to take over the government by any means.
Right. So there has been this sort of Constantinian captivity of primitive Christianity, where a lot of people today assume that so long as we take the government back for the cause of Jesus Christ, we have somehow are winning the battle or beginning to kind of get to this kind of promised land. And I think we have a lot to learn from the Anabaptist tradition in the Reformation period. They were hotly pursued and persecuted, but they felt that persecution or difficulties surrounding their life would actually be a sort of a purifying element.
Well, it's happening now, and
it is
so we're getting purified.
Right, right. So I think, so rather than offering a lot of Jeremiahs and say, these are doomsdays, I mean, I think there are a lot of the early Christians really believed that they were yearning for the return of Christ, because the questions of theodicy, questions of suffering and evil, they believed could only be resolvable with the second coming of the Lord.
Right. In some cases, the worse it gets,
yes.
Maybe we're closer to Christ's return,
right.
and we shouldn't, be too concerned. But,
right.
Father Baker, a lot of us are concerned with the fact that our institutions, our public schools and media, so much of it is controlled by people who are clearly ungodly. They do have an agenda, and it seems to be to totally destroy Christianity and to make us all secular. Would you agree with that, or am I exaggerating here?
Well, I don't know if I would put it in quite exactly the same terms, but I do think there is a hostility, and I think, at least in the case of some people, a very a deliberate one. And I think to the extent that we're in a position to stand up and to do something about that, we should, and we might win or we might lose. But I would agree very much that I don't think that is the doomsday, really, because that example of the early Christians, I think, is very powerful, because even though all the powers that be were absolutely against them, they turn that world upside down.
And you know, even at Vanderbilt University, where about half of the Christian groups are unregistered, all of them are reporting tremendous growth. And I understand just a few weeks ago that there was some type of, they had a guest speaker that met with the students, and then afterwards he said, if anyone wants to stay behind and hear my testimony, I will give it. And 30 people received Christ. I think 300 stayed behind. And so even with persecution all around us, it's not hurting Christians, and I think we get too comfortable sometimes.
Well, not only comfortable, but frankly, we might even rely on the perks that come with power or something like that, which are really contrary to the gospel of Jesus Christ, really. We need to do that through the power of love, through the power of sacrifice, the power of witness.
A bit later, we'll get perspectives from some college students. Please stay with us as we continue to examine the issue of where faith and values are headed in America.